We shall continue to look at diversity in private education. Our focus will be, to begin with, on what are the implications of diversity in the provision of education. Now, before we look at the private sector, let us look at the government sector. The government sector, by comparison, tends to be very homogeneous, same across, while the private sector tends to be different, depending on the kind of education, the level of education, and the medium of instruction that the schools offer. And therefore, there are implications in terms of impact on policy and on the socio-economic milieu. That's the mixture of students that come to these schools to receive education. Now, in these schools, students that come and receive matric level education versus students that come and receive O-level education, obviously, just by this very fact, the mixture of students from the socioeconomic background is definitely very different. So, what implications does this provide for the policymakers in terms of making sure that students receive quality education, whether it is metric level, whether it is O-level, in the private schools, and also, therefore, what are the implications for the results that come from the private schools and those that come from the government sector schools as well. From one point of view, diversity in the private educational marketplace is a response to variance in the demand which already exists in society. Society, the community outside the schools, the parents, they want private education for different reasons, and that's the variance. The variation is in the reasons for why parents are seeking private education for their children, and a demanding factor is the cost of private education. Many parents would like to send their children for private education, but they cannot because of the cost involved, and therefore either settle for a lower level of private education or total public or government sector education. However, some believe that from the vantage point of harmony and equality in the society, the very fact that private educational institutions are configured to a diverse range of social, economic, ideological, and religious lines is a matter of concern. That is true. If we want society to be equal, we want everyone to get the same level and quality of education, the private sector does not fit into this mode because it caters definitely to a better level of education in many ways. So if we want the same level of education, if we want all our students to get equal opportunities to education, we will either have to raise the standards of the existing government schools and bring them at least partially at par with the private schools, or the government will have to mandate a standardized curriculum that all private schools will need to teach. That's a big challenge because when parents pay more, they demand more. And when they demand more, they deserve to see that their demands are being met. So in either case, this is a challenge for the government. The better option would definitely be to raise the standards of the government education levels. This apprehension is best explained by the fact that a textbook used in a private school preaches to the students that listening to music, watching television, and even playing carom board or flying kites are sinful acts. These are things that go into curriculum depending on the kind of curriculum and the syllabus and the textbooks that the schools opt for. When you opt for different levels of material for the school and the classroom, obviously the content will differ. So what is it? Why do we teach these things to students? And what is the purpose? What do we want the students to gain? How will the student benefit by looking at and reading something like this content that we just looked at? So, if the content, if the syllabus, if the textbooks were the same, if the curriculum prescribed was mandated for all private schools to teach the same curriculum, it would solve a lot of issues. On the other hand, there are many private schools which teach music to children in regular classes and promote the liberal arts. That is true. Very many private schools follow the liberal arts curriculum, which means the humanities and the arts, performing arts, visual arts, are all important things for children to learn. After all, every child is not going to become a doctor, engineer, computer expert. Children will become what they are best at. And there are children that are best at performing arts, visual arts, and so on. And so schools promote those kinds of education opportunities also. Therefore, the two types of schools are producing two groups of students with entirely opposite worldviews. This case illustrates the potential implications of different types of schools for social harmony, peace, and national integration. If we want all our young people to come together, this is not going to work. We will have to somehow make sure that what students learn and get in private schools is the same as what they learn and get in government schools, or the other way around, that the government school students get the same type and quality of education as is available in private schools. Otherwise, the disparity will continue to exist.